Ever get that feeling like, someone is living a double life? Like
Yeah.
maybe a neighbor you thought you knew or a coworker who always seems, I don't know, just a little too perfect.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive takes us to Gley, Colorado,
Oh, okay.
where we're going to unravel a story of infidelity and betrayal and ultimately murder. The case of Heather Garris.
Wow.
It's a twisted one where a seemingly simple love triangle turns into something way more sinister.
Yeah, what's fascinating to me here is how quickly, like a seemingly, normal life can spiral into chaos.
Right.
We have police interviews, court testimonies, personal accounts. I mean, just a mountain of information to sift through.
Yeah.
Our goal today is to kind of understand how this tragedy unfolded,
Yeah.
what signs might have been missed,
So,
and what this case tells us about, I don't know, maybe the dark side of human nature.
yeah, because infidelity is sadly more common than we'd like to think.
Right.
But in this case, the consequences are deadly.
Yeah.
So we're starting with Officer Garris, known as IG. On the surface, he's a respected cop, a husband, a father. But as we'll see, he was also juggling a secret affair for almost 3 years.
Wow.
An affair that resulted in a child with another officer's wife.
And that's where the real drama, begins, right?
Right.
Think about the level of deception required to maintain that kind of double life.
Right.
The constant fear of exposure, the compartmentalization, the impact on everyone involved. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster.
It definitely sets the stage for some, high-stakes tension.
Yeah.
IG's wife, Heather, suspected something was wrong. Imagine those nagging doubts, trying to piece together the truth while hoping you're wrong.
We often see this in cases of infidelity, sort of a cognitive dissonance. It's easier to deny the possibility of betrayal than to face the painful reality.
Right.
But the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, the fallout can be devastating.
And boy, did things fall apart quickly in this case.
Yeah.
One night, all of IG's lies are exposed, leading to a confrontation with Heather. She leaves him, takes their daughter.
Right.
And you can practically feel the emptiness in that house. A note left on the table.
Yeah.
Like a ghost of their shattered life.
It's a pivotal moment, a point of no return.
Yeah.
Now, you'd think IG would be drowning in remorse, trying to salvage his marriage.
Right.
But instead, he does something quite surprising.
Yeah.
He seeks comfort in the arms of the very woman who caused this whole mess, Shauna.
Oh, wow.
They meet at a bar, far from the watchful eyes of their small town, to, kind of figure out what to do next.
It's almost like he's clinging to the life he built with Shauna, the one that existed in the shadows.
Yeah.
Maybe he was in love, maybe it was just an escape,
Right.
but it's a decision that speaks volumes about his state of mind.
It's a classic example of what psychologists call avoidant attachment. Rather than facing the consequences of his actions, he seeks solace in the familiar, even if that familiar is inherently unhealthy.
Right. But just when you think the story is settling into predictable territory, cheating husband loses everything, tries to win back his wife. Something totally unexpected happens. Heather comes back.
And here's where we see a glimpse of Heather's strength. She's not just accepting the situation, she's laying down the law.
Right.
She tells IG that she's willing to try to reconcile, but on her terms. He has to end the affair immediately, get tested for STDs, see a counselor, and prove he's truly committed to their marriage.
It's a powerful move.
Yeah.
She's not just a victim in this story. She's taking control,
Absolutely.
setting boundaries,
Right.
demanding respect.
It's also a testament to, the complex nature of love and forgiveness. Despite the betrayal, she's willing to give him another chance, but she's not doing it blindly. She's protecting herself emotionally and physically.
Right.
And to his credit, IG agrees to her conditions.
Wow.
He ends things with Shauna right then and there in front of Heather.
But as you can imagine, Shauna doesn't take this lying down. We're talking angry emails, texts, voicemails, even a picture of IG's son with Shauna sent to Heather.
Oh, wow.
It's a full-on scorned lover meltdown.
What's interesting here is how Shauna's reaction kind of reflects a sense of betrayal and entitlement.
Right.
For years, she's been living with the promise of a future with IG, and now that promise is shattered.
Right.
It triggers a wave of anger and a desire to, inflict pain.
So IG and Heather do what anyone in their situation would do.
Yeah.
They try to escape the drama, they change their numbers and head off on a pre-planned Christmas trip to Florida. But even thousands of miles away, they can't quite outrun the fallout of IG's actions.
That's the thing about betrayal.
Yeah.
It casts a long shadow.
Right.
The emotional wounds run deep and can take a long time to heal.
And in this case, the wounds are about to get much deeper. Because when IG and Heather return from their trip, the situation escalates even further. They're trying to rebuild their lives, but Shauna's anger is a constant threat. IG even has his lawyer send her a cease and desist letter, while she, in turn, hires a lawyer to formalize child support and sever IG's parental rights to their son.
It's a bitter legal battle, one that underscores the messy and often painful consequences of infidelity. It also highlights the collateral damage, the children caught in the crossfire, the families torn apart.
And just when it seems like things couldn't get any worse, tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
On January 31st, 2007, Heather is shot and killed at the credit union where she works.
This is where our deep dive takes a chilling turn. What started as a story of infidelity and betrayal now becomes a murder investigation. And as we'll see, the truth behind Heather's death is far more complex and disturbing than anyone could have imagined.
Yeah, the murder of Heather Garris throws like this dark cloud over what was already a very complex situation. That's like a piece of shattered glass, right? Each shard reflects a different angle of the story, a different perspective on, I guess, on the truth.
And as we examine, the events surrounding Heather's death, the question becomes, was this a random act of violence, or was it a calculated act of revenge?
So let's rewind to January 31st, 2007. It seems like just another day for IG. He's at home, catching up on sleep after working the late shift. His daughter, Victoria, and Heather have already left for the day. So he wakes up, gets ready, picks Victoria up from school.
Okay.
It's a normal afternoon, the kind that probably feels like a breath of fresh air after the weeks of turmoil they've been through.
The routine, the normalcy, it can be a powerful coping mechanism in the face of trauma, right?
Yeah.
They go for ice cream, pick up groceries, come home, start preparing for a fishing trip. It's almost as if they're trying to reclaim a sense of peace, to create new memories that aren't tainted by the shadow of infidelity.
But then the phone rings.
Yeah. And with that ring, their world is shattered once again.
It's Sarah, a coworker of Heather's, and she tells IG that Heather has been shot at the credit union.
Oh, wow.
Imagine getting that call, right? The disbelief, the surge of adrenaline.
Right.
That desperate need to know if Heather's okay.
Yeah.
So he immediately calls the police dispatcher to confirm, but they deny any knowledge of a shooting at the credit union. He even gets transferred to a supervisor who insists they have no information.
Now, why would the police withhold this information?
Right.
It's highly unusual, especially in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
It suggests that, they already have suspicions about IG's involvement, and they're trying to control the situation, perhaps to prevent him from fleeing or tampering with evidence.
They're aware of the affair, the drama with Shauna.
Yeah.
And now Heather's been shot. It's a recipe for suspicion.
Right.
But IG doesn't know any of this.
Right.
He's just a frantic husband trying to get to his wife.
Yeah.
So he grabs Victoria, rushes to the credit union, only to be met with flashing lights, crime tape, an ambulance.
It's a scene that evokes instant dread.
Yeah.
That primal fear of the unknown.
Right.
And for IG, who's a police officer himself, it must be doubly unsettling.
Yeah.
Seeing this familiar scene from the other side. Knowing something terrible has happened, but not knowing the extent of it.
He tries to push past the officers to get inside, but he's stopped and told that Heather has been taken to the hospital. So he and Victoria are driven to the Northern Colorado Medical Center, but by the time they arrive, it's already too late.
Imagine the weight of that moment.
I know.
The crushing realization that he's lost his wife, the woman he was trying to rebuild his life with.
Right.
And then having to process that grief while also comforting his young daughter who's just lost her mother. It's an impossible situation, a level of emotional turmoil it's hard to comprehend.
Absolutely. The police, still viewing IG with suspicion, try to keep him under observation.
Yeah.
But he's overwhelmed. He has to tell Victoria that her mother is dead, a task no parent should ever have to face.
This speaks to the profound impact of trauma on children.
Right.
How do you explain such a loss to a child? How do you make sense of the senseless?
Right.
The ripple effects of this tragedy are going to be felt for years to come.
And while IG is grappling with this unimaginable loss, another piece of this complex puzzle starts to fall into place. We need to shift our focus to Shauna Nelson's husband, Ken.
Okay.
So Ken, who is also a police officer, is on his way to a task force meeting when he receives a call that his wife has been arrested in connection with Heather's murder.
Wow.
Now, put yourself in his shoes. He's already dealing with the betrayal of his wife's affair.
Right.
And now he's being told she's a murder suspect. It's a complete shock.
Yeah.
A moment where his world turns upside down.
The layers of betrayal here are just staggering.
Right.
First, the discovery of his wife's affair.
Yeah.
And now the possibility that she's capable of murder.
Right.
It's a blow that strikes at the core of his identity, his trust, his sense of safety.
So he stops by their house to check on their 3 young children. He finds them alone.
This detail is particularly unsettling. It suggests a lack of foresight, a failure to prioritize her children's well-being in the face of this crisis.
Right.
It raises questions about her state of mind, her capacity for, rational decision-making.
Right. It's a red flag that adds to the growing suspicion surrounding her.
Right.
So Ken takes the children to his sister's care, and then he drives to the task force headquarters, where he's met with like a flurry of activity and just this whirlwind of emotions.
He's trying to process this, sudden and shocking turn of events.
Yeah.
To reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the woman accused of murder.
Right.
It's a cognitive dissonance that can be incredibly difficult to resolve.
While he's sitting in his car, struggling to make sense of everything, another officer, Jonathan Tryon, approaches him.
Okay.
Tryon, who's known Ken for years, immediately senses his distress.
Yeah.
He tries to offer comfort.
Right.
To provide, a sense of support in this moment of crisis.
Yeah.
But then he notices something that sends a chill down his spine. Ken's service weapon is lying on the passenger seat.
Now, this is highly unusual, especially for a trained police officer.
Right.
Leaving your service weapon unattended is a major breach of protocol.
Yeah.
And it immediately raises red flags for training.
It suggests a lapse in judgment, a possible sign of emotional instability.
Right.
And given the circumstances, it's a detail that can't be ignored.
Absolutely.
So Tryon, sensing something is amiss, asks Ken if he can take the weapon. Ken, seemingly in a daze, agrees. Tryon secures the weapon and turns it over to the Evidence and Property Department.
This seemingly insignificant act will later prove to be a pivotal moment in the investigation.
Right.
It's a reminder that even the smallest details can have enormous consequences, especially in a case as complex as this.
And as the investigation unfolds, those seemingly insignificant details start to weave a very tangled web. The focus shifts from Shauna's potential involvement to something far more unexpected. Because, as we'll discover in the next part of our deep dive, the gun that Officer Tryon collected from Ken Nelson holds a shocking secret, a secret that will change the course of the entire investigation. Welcome back to our deep dive into the case of Heather Garris. So as we left off, Ken Nelson's service weapon had been taken into evidence. It seemed like, a pretty routine procedure at the time.
Right.
But as investigators dug deeper into the circumstances surrounding Heather's murder, the truth about that gun, oh boy, it would send shockwaves through the case.
Yeah, I remember the initial focus was on Shauna. She had a clear jealousy, anger,
Right.
and her behavior in the hours leading up to the shooting raised some serious red flags.
Yep.
But as they pieced together the timeline, certain inconsistencies started to emerge.
So while the police are building their case against Shauna, Ken's gun sits in the evidence locker, unexamined. It's almost like a ticking time bomb, waiting to detonate and just shatter the assumptions everyone's been working with.
And that's precisely what happens.
Yeah.
As the investigation progresses, the police start to question, Shauna's account of the day.
Right.
Her alibi is shaky, and there are gaps in her timeline that they can't explain.
So they decide to broaden their scope, taking a closer look at, everyone connected to the case, including Ken. And when you consider his behavior that night, the distress, leaving his gun unattended, asking Tryon to take it, those actions start to take on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, it's a classic example of hindsight bias. At the time, those actions were seen as understandable reactions to the trauma of discovering his wife's involvement in a murder.
Right.
But in light of the emerging inconsistencies, they become like potential clues.
Yeah.
Pieces of a puzzle that don't quite fit.
And the missing piece, the one that brings the whole picture into focus, is the gun. They finally decide to run ballistics tests on Ken's service weapon.
Okay.
And the results are undeniable.
The bullet that killed Heather was fired from Ken's gun.
Wow.
It's a bombshell revelation that flips the entire investigation on its head.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the grieving husband, the seemingly betrayed spouse, becomes the prime suspect.
Talk about a twist. It's like something out of a crime novel,
Yeah.
but this is real life with real consequences.
Yeah.
Now the investigators have to grapple with a whole new set of questions.
Right.
Did Ken act alone? Was this a premeditated act? or a crime of passion fueled by the revelation of his wife's affair and her potential involvement in Heather's death.
What's so compelling about this case is the human element.
Right.
We have these individuals caught in this web of deceit and betrayal, their lives intertwined in ways they never could have imagined.
Right.
And now, with the truth about the murder weapon revealed, we're forced to reevaluate everything we thought we knew.
It makes you question the very nature of trust and deception. How well can we ever truly know those closest to us? And what happens when the foundation of our relationships is built on lies?
Those are the questions that linger long after the details of the case fade from memory.
Right.
The case of Heather Garris is a stark reminder that the truth is often far more complex and disturbing than we initially perceive.
Yeah.
It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to consider the hidden motivations and the unintended consequences that shape our lives and the lives of those around us.
Well, as we conclude this deep dive, we're left with more questions than answers. The investigation into Heather's murder would continue, uncovering even more secrets and betrayals, leading to a trial that captivated the nation. If this case has piqued your curiosity, we encourage you to explore the further episodes in this series to, kind of learn how this twisted tale unfolds.
And remember, truth can be elusive,
Right.
often hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's in the seemingly insignificant details, the overlooked clues, that the real story often lies.
So the next time you think you have someone figured out, remember the case of Heather Garris. Things are rarely as simple as they seem. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next installment of this riveting true crime saga. Until next time, keep those critical thinking caps on. Remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.